Buenos días, clase de Español 2. Estamos aprendiendo hoy cómo usar el imperfecto, el tenso imperfecto, que es el más fácil de todos los tensos para aprender. So today we're going to learn how to use the imperfect tense of verbs, and you will find that it is by far the easiest tense that we have to learn. Actions that happened in the past, but over an unspecified period of time. So this tense deals with things that we used to do or things that we did in the past, but we don't necessarily tell you that we finished doing them or that they're already over with, but they're things that have happened and continue to happen often. The imperfect tenses have no stem changers. This makes them the easiest tense there is of all of the tenses in Spanish because there are no stem changers and there are no imperfects. Well, except for three. We have only three irregular verbs in the whole Spanish dictionary when it talks about when we're dealing with imperfect tenses. So let's begin. AR verbs are the easiest of the verbs. There are absolutely no imperfect, or I should say, there are absolutely no irregular AR verbs. So the three that are irregular will not be AR verbs. They always end with an aba. So let's say the verb cantar is to sing. Yo cantaba means I used to sing, or I sang all the time, or I was singing, but it doesn't say when I was singing, and it doesn't say for how long that singing happened. It just took place in an unspecified period of time in the past. Tú cantabas, you were singing or you used to sing, and él cantaba, he sang, used to sing or was singing in an unspecified period of time. Nosotros cantábamos. Notice the accent on the first A of the ábamos. Nosotros cantábamos. We were singing or we used to sing. Ellos cantaban. They sang. They used to sing. They were singing are the different ways that we can translate the imperfect past tense. So that's verbs. When do we use the preterite? The preterite past tense, which I've already taught you, and we had so many stem changing verbs and irregular verbs, and that was a very difficult past tense to learn. But the preterite tense is generally used for actions in the past that are completed. I call it a done deal. There's usually a beginning and an end that's either stated or implied. For example, yo observé la clase desde la 1 hasta las 2 de la tarde. That means that I observed the class from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So it has a specified beginning, has a specified finish. That's why I use the preterite tense and not the imperfect tense. Yo observé, the preterite tense that you guys already know. We've already studied that tense. The next sentence, Hernán escribió la carta antes de salir. So before Hernán left, it says he wrote the letter. In other words, he finished the letter before he left. So we have defined a time period that it's a done deal. The letter has already been written. So we say escribió and not escribía. When to use the imperfect? The imperfect tense is generally used for actions in the past that are not completed. There's no definite beginning or an end. If they have completed, we're not stating that they have, and we leave that ambiguous. For example, Mario trabajaba en el hospital. We could translate that Mario used to work in the hospital. Or we could say Mario was working in the hospital. But what we don't know is, does he still work there? We don't know when he stopped working there. We don't know when he began, just that he worked in the hospital. Sometimes we'll say in English, Mario used to work in the hospital. So we use the aba or the imperfect tense. Now you try it. What do you think about this? Luisa studied for 2 hours. Would that be the imperfect or the preterite past tense? She studied for 2 hours. You try it. Okay. I hope you said preterite. The preterite is a done deal. She studied for 2 hours. It's over with. We have a specified amount of time. She did this for 2 hours and it's a done deal. So we use the preterite tense. Luisa estudió por 2 horas. Try this one. Julia used to speak Spanish. Is that preterite tense or imperfect tense? You're right. It has to be the imperfect tense. Anytime we say somebody used to do something in English, we will know in Spanish that that has to be the imperfect tense. Imperfect is when something does not have a stated time or for how long it used to happen. She just used to speak Spanish, so it's the imperfect. Julia hablaba español. Try another one. Hugo played all the time. Would that be imperfect or preterite? Correct. That would be the imperfect tense because this is something he did all the time. We don't know when it began or stopped, but it's definitely not a done deal. He did it all the time and we don't know if he continues to do so. So it's imperfect. Hugo jugaba todo el tiempo. One more. Francisco played guitar from 2 p.m. until 3 p.m. Would we use the imperfect past or the preterite past? Correct. It would be the preterite because we say when he started and when he stopped. So it's Francisco tocó la guitarra desde las 2 hasta las 3 de la tarde. Tocó, preterite tense because we say when he began and when he finished. ER verbs and IR verbs. How do we put them in the imperfect tense? Well, I call it the ia endings. So we take yo comía for the word comer. Yo comía. I ate. I was eating or I used to eat. Tú comías. You used to eat or you were eating. Él comía. He used to eat or was eating. Nosotros comíamos. We used to eat or we were eating. Ellos comían. They used to eat or they were eating. IR verbs are done exactly the same as ER verbs. The endings are the same. Yo vivía. Vivía is I used to eat or you used to eat. Tú vivías. You lived or you used to live at a certain address. You used to live there. Él vivía. He used to live or he was living at a certain place. Notice that the yo form and the el form on all of the imperfect verbs are the same. Yo vivía, él vivía. They're always the same. The yo form and the he or she form is always the same. Nosotros vivíamos, we used to live, or ellos vivían, they used to live. The irregular imperfect verbs, as I mentioned, are only 3 of them in the whole dictionary. The first one is the verb ser, to be. And it's a characteristic of what something used to be characteristically. So you could say, yo era, I was. Tú eres, you were. Or él era, he was. Notice that these verbs have nothing similar to the verb ser. I had one student point out that it's pretty simple. Just take the S off of it and then add the endings of an AR verb to it. If that helps you, it might make it easier, but I just call these irregulars and you just have to learn them. Nosotros éramos. We were. Notice the accent on the E, éramos. And ellos eran. They were. The second verb that's irregular is the verb ir. Ir is yo iba. Tú ibas. Él iba. Again, notice that always the yo form and the he or she form are the same. Yo iba or él iba. Nosotros íbamos. And notice the accent on the I, íbamos. Ellos iban. And the third and the last of the irregular verbs in the imperfect tense is the verb ver. This verb is very similar, would be very regular, except that we added an E. When you take off the ER ending of this verb, you only have a V, but we added an E back into it before we put the endings of an IA on it. So we have yo veía, tú veías, él veía. Notice that the I on these always has an accent. Nosotros veíamos and ellos veían. So those are the only 3 irregular verbs in the whole Spanish dictionary. That makes this the most, shall I say, the easiest of all of the tenses. There's a few rules to learn for the imperfect tense. The imperfect is used for actions that were repeated habitually. So if we say, Carlos montaba bicicleta a la universidad por 2 semestres, he habitually did this for 2 weeks. It's something habitual. Maybe he doesn't even go to the university anymore, and so he doesn't do this anymore, but he did it habitually for 2 semesters. So we say montaba. So we use the imperfect for habitual past tense. Another rule for the past tense is the imperfect is used for actions that set the stage for another action. For example, Laura estaba cocinando cuando las luces se apagaron. She was cooking. She was doing this when something interrupted her cooking. The lights turned off. So when we're setting the stage for something that somebody was doing, when something else interrupts that action, then the first verb that was happening, setting the stage, is the imperfect tense. Whereas the second past tense verb that interrupted that action quickly and interrupted it would be in the preterite tense. Laura estaba cocinando cuando las luces se apagaron. Another rule for the imperfect is that when we're telling time or stating somebody's age, we always use the imperfect, never the preterite. For example, era la 1 de la tarde cuando nos sentamos a comer. It was 1 in the afternoon when we sat down to eat. So we're telling the time, we say era. We would never say fue la 1 de la tarde. We would say era la 1 de la tarde because we use the imperfect past tense to tell time. Also, to tell age, Sara tenía 6 años cuando fue al kinder. Tenía, imperfect tense, because we use the imperfect tense to describe age. We never say tuvo 6 años. We would say tenía, use the imperfect tense for age. Well, we have a few words for our vocabulary on this lesson. That's caerse. Notice it's reflexive. It means to fall. Doler is to hurt. Enfermarse is to get sick. Lastimarse is to hurt yourself. Romperse would be to break your bone, break your arm or your leg. Romperse. Toser is to cough. Torcerse is to twist, like to twist an ankle. Acostarse, to lay down. Poder is to be able to do something. Sufrir is to suffer, but in Spanish, in a medical term, we often use the word sufrir just to say that we had a sickness, sufrí una enfermedad. We often use that word. Or we could just say, I was sick, estaba enfermo. So these are the